a Thursday, which means it is time for Brandon's best bets for week 2 of the National Football League season, as well as my full 16-game money line predictions. Now, as you guys know, last week I did go 10-6 in the money line. I did go 3 for 5 in best bets, which I will take. It was a winning week. Now, today, I will tell you right off the bat, all of my best bets are in the 1 o'clock window, and I am also taking all favorites. Quick reminder, we are in collaboration with the one, the only Voltage Live. I also do a debate show with my good buddy Josh Unger as a part of Voltage Live. That airs Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. Championship rings. All those links are in the description below. Now, when it comes to week 2 in the NFL, obviously week 1 is always overreaction week. There are teams that we thought would be really good that struggle. There are teams that we thought were not going to be so good that lit the world on fire. I think starting in week 2 and especially in week 3, everything comes back down to earth. And I think sort of week 3, week 4 on, you can start betting quarterback matchups and start betting team matchups. But here we go, week 2. We got a big Thursday night game to kick it off. We got the Bills and Dolphins down in South Beach. And obviously, before we get into this game, I just want to say, as I did on Tuesday's show, Tyreek Hill, that whole incident outside the stadium with the police officers that was completely uncalled for in the officer's case, especially as well going up to Calais Campbell and Jonnu Smith. Everything surrounding this situation was just horrible, and good for Tyreek Hill for bouncing back and getting a touchdown. And obviously doing the celebration, just a horrific incident over a traffic violation. But when it comes to this game, listen, I really like Miami. The spread at this point, is anywhere between 1 and 2 points. I'm not gonna bet this game because I have a hard time betting against Josh Allen. Of course, I did last week with the Arizona Cardinals, but that was a Kyler Murray situation. That was an NFC opponent. You don't see them a ton. This is a divisional game. We know Buffalo has owned Miami in the past. I would say the difference here is this is early in the season, not late in the season. Miami did struggle a little bit offensively against Jacksonville. And again, maybe the team was distracted. Maybe the Jaguars defense with the new defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen, who came over from the Atlanta Falcons. New scheme caught Miami off guard a little bit. I don't know what the case may be. But I do know that Josh Allen did whatever he wanted against Arizona's defense in the second half of that game. And he did so, by the way, with basically no weapons. Don Kincaid, Dawson Knox, the two big tight ends, and James Cook, yes. But Ian Coleman did not have a big game at the receiver spot. They're relying a lot on Curtis Samuel, and they're relying a lot on Josh Allen using his legs. And Josh Allen willed Buffalo to that victory. I think it's a short week. Yes, it's a divisional game, but I think especially early in the season, Buffalo has a lot of new secondary parts. Will they be able to keep up with Miami's speed? Because Marvin Harrison, quite frankly, was wide open to end that game, and Kyler Murray just missed them, whether it was the pass rush or just a miss by Murray. I think the Dolphins need this game more than Buffalo. I think Mike McDaniel is going to bring urgency here. I think it really is a coin flip game, but I like Miami at home. The next game, I am betting. This number has been anywhere between 3 and 3.5. Our official betting lines are brought to you by FanDuel here on Brandon's World. FanDuel, if you're listening, let's reach out. Let's do a partnership. You are my favorite and only sports betting app that I do use. I like the Jaguars, and I got them at 3.5, and I like it, and I'm taking it here with the Jaguars. Listen, I talked about it on Tuesday's show. When it comes to the Deshaun Watson situation, we all know what's going on with that. If you watch my TikTok on Tuesday as well, if you watch my video, if you watch me debate Josh Unger on championship rings, I've been consistent on this. I don't think Deshaun Watson should play on Sunday. I think Deshaun Watson should essentially serve a team suspension. I think it's too much of a distraction for the Browns, who can't cut him because they're going to have to deal with a $170 million cap hit. but I don't think Deshaun Watson should play in a Cleveland Browns uniform until this situation is resolved. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the fans feel that way. And being in Cleveland, I think a lot of Browns fans wanted to give Deshaun Watson the benefit of the doubt going into this season, and now that's been thrown out the window. And quite frankly, again, if it wasn't for a Travis Etienne fumble, Jacksonville could have beat Miami last week. And I thought their defense early in the season, again, the new defensive coordinator coming over from Atlanta, I thought it was going to take time to be in work in progress, but maybe their defense is better than we originally thought. Now, Doug Peterson, my old coach in Philadelphia, too aggressive in that game, going for it on his own 30-yard line, 4th and 1, flipped all the momentum. I do think that obviously the rookie there for Jacksonville, Thomas caught a touchdown. I think alongside Christian Kirk, you still got Evan Ingram, who did only catch one ball in week one. But Jacksonville's got weapons. I think it's really hard to play down there in that heat. I think the Browns will be distracted, slash have been distracted all week. Saying that though, the Browns did get embarrassed, and usually in week two, teams that get embarrassed do come back. They do play well. So it wouldn't shock me in the least bit if the Browns do play well. Though again, I think this is just a different situation entirely. Now it is football, and we saw a very bad Browns offensive line in week one, whether that's the Cowboys, whether it's coaching. I thought Kevin Stefanski put together a terrible game plan myself for Cleveland. The Browns are in a weird spot. Anything can happen. It's any given Sunday in football. New England beat Cincinnati last week. Jacksonville could turn around here and lose to the Browns. But I don't think that's the case. I am taking Jacksonville. A rarity that I'm betting against my hometown team, but I'm sorry, people, I have to. I'm taking the Jaguars -3.5. Next game, I'm taking the Jets. Now, this number has come down a little bit. It's between anywhere between 4.5. I've seen 3.5 in some places. I'm getting them at 4.5. I like the Jets. I like them to cover against Tennessee. I know the Titans got off to a 17-0 start against the Bears, but what I watched of Will Levis in the second half, I cannot undo. Also, I think the Jets played arguably the hardest game of the year at San Francisco, week one, where the Niners were clearly over prepared. Kyle Shanahan knows that defense that Robert Saleh ran. That was Robert Saleh, his defensive coordinator a long time ago there before he got the Jets job in San Francisco. It was Aaron Rodgers' first game back, and I think Robert Saleh and the Jets defense is going to overwhelm Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans. I like the Jets to bounce back here. I think they're going to get Brees Hall going more. I think you're going to see a lot more of Garrett Wilson. I think you're going to see Aaron Rodgers getting more and more comfortable. And again, the Jets were embarrassed. Everybody's saying it's the same old Jets. Buffalo won, Miami won, New England won. The Jets cannot afford to go down 0-2. I think they bounce back here and cover. I'm also taking Seattle. I'm taking a -3.5 here. I think that they do cover against New England. I'm a little bit iffy on this one, because I don't know how to feel yet about either team. Seattle, they obviously have the weapons, and Jackson Smith and Jigba is looking to be a part of a big year too. I thought Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator from Baltimore, that transition over to Seattle may be more seamless than I had originally thought. I know a lot of Seahawks fans in the area are very high on the Seahawks this year, think they can compete with the Rams, the Niners, Arizona in that NFC West. I like everything about the roster. You guys know how I feel about Geno Smith. And I think that Gerard Mayo's defense, who played very well last week against Cincinnati, could they force some turnovers? Could it be another low scoring game where New England just runs the hell out of the ball? I mean, Denver did get two safeties off this Seattle offensive line last week, which is already dealing with injuries. There's a scenario, but the Seahawks are one of those weird squads where during the entire peak era, especially when they've had Russ, they've been very good going from the West Coast to the East Coast. The time difference flying across the country doesn't seem to make a big difference to this team. Now, again, maybe it all changes with Mike McDonald as the head coach, but I will take Seattle here and I will take them to cover the 3.5. I think Jacoby Brissett will make a couple mistakes. I don't think New England is going to limit Seattle to 10 points like they did Cincinnati last week. And we know New England's defense gave up 10 points last year and went 0-3. Their defense is very good, but their offense is still not great. And I think Seattle is going to be able to put up more points than what Cincinnati did a week ago. I don't think New England is going to sneak up on Seattle the way it did on Cincinnati. And then I'm taking Indy. Yeah, I'm gonna bet them against Green Bay -3.5. Now this may change. I may substitute a game out here and there if I find out Jordan Love is gonna play for Green Bay. Matt LaFleur and crew have not ruled him out yet, to my shock. And I do think that there's a lot of speculation out there that Green Bay could go after Ryan Tannehill. My take on Jordan Love's injury is if Green Bay thought he was going to miss the entire 6 weeks, I think Ryan Tannehill would have already been in the building. I think the fact they're not ruling him out yet, I don't think that's gamesmanship at all by LaFleur, though I don't expect him to play. I think it's an encouraging sign because when we first saw that injury, it looked like, it could be season ending. So I think Jordan Love's going to be back in a couple weeks. I think Green Bay is going to try to manipulate the ship with Malik Willis, who, unless you're using him like I am in a Men 25 franchise with my two cousins and my brother, he has not thrown for 100 yards in an NFL game in his 3 starts, and he's 0-3. Malik Willis is not an NFL quarterback. Again, unless you're using him in Madden. I think Shane Steichen's a brilliant offensive coach. I think Indianapolis's pass rush got after Houston last week, and Green Bay's offensive line is good. It's not as good as it was in years past. So I like Indy here. And this was a go either way game early in the season. This was one of the top games for me in week 2 prior to the injury for Jordan Love. This could be a game that, decides if Indy goes to the playoffs or Green Bay does not. Yes, early in the season. Vegas at Baltimore. It's a lot of points here, 9.5. The Ravens certainly could cover, though I'm not going to take it. Again, I don't like big favorites this early in the season. Vegas, we know, is a feisty team. And the Ravens, I'm very interested to see if Isaiah Likely is once again the focal point of this offense, because if he is, as I proposed on Tuesday, does he become the number one option in that offense now over Mark Andrews? Does Baltimore go to more 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 running back sets? How does Baltimore use Derrick Henry against the Vegas defensive line that has, added Christian Wilkins from Miami in the offseason, but did get run over by Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins in week 1? And there was a situation in this game where the Raiders against the Chargers, they had the ball at the Charger 43-yard line. They were down 16-10, 7 minutes ago. It was 4th and 1, and Antonio Pierce punted the football like a defensive coach would do. And J.K. Dobbins broke off a long run. The Chargers scored a touchdown, and it was essentially ball game from that point on. Gardner Minshew played okay, threw a touchdown pass out of the backfield. Did not play great. They did not get the ball down the field a lot to the likes of Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. Again, like the Raiders on paper, I like their weapons. They have a defensive coach who's all about toughness, and their quarterback, without Shane Steichen calling plays, is not going to be a good quarterback. There's a scenario here where Baltimore blows them out, but again, does Vegas play them tough and hang in there and cover? There's a scenario there, so I'm not going to take it. Chargers at Panthers. This is a very interesting game because I like the Chargers to win the game. Back and forth between Seattle and the Chargers on Survivor. I think I'm going to take the Chargers. I took Cincinnati last week. I got burned. Now, last year, week 2, everybody took the Chargers over Tennessee, and Tennessee came up with a victory. This is a different Charger team, though. This is a Charger team led by Jim Harbaugh. What makes me nervous about this game is 2 things. I think the Chargers are going to win the game, but I would be nervous about betting the 6.5 for 2 reasons. Number one is I don't care how bad the Panthers are, which Bryce Young looked like he could not play quarterback in the league, even with a great play caller like Dave Canales calling the plays and those weapons they have. It was a disaster against the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. But teams that get embarrassed in week one, like I said, usually do come back to the pack. So I do expect a better effort from Carolina. The other thing is, Wyatt McContry, he did catch a touchdown in week one. I'm expecting him to be a big part of this Charger offense, but they don't have a ton of weapons outside of, again, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins in the run game. They do have a great offensive line. Joe Owens at right tackle, Rashawn Slater at left tackle. I don't expect Carolina to get a lot of pressure on the Chargers, but the Chargers are not going to have a lot of plays over the top. This is not a Justin Herbert led offense. This is a very Michigan, very Harbaugh with the Niners, very Stanford with Harbaugh. Run the ball, play action, play good defense, be physical type football team. And so I don't know if they are going to be able to blow people out. They struggled last week against a Raider defense that, again, has talent and is not great in the back end. So I would be a little bit nervous here about the number, which is why I'm not going to take the bet, but I like the Chargers here to win. And again, that is my survivor pick. Giants at Commanders. Now, same theory here with the New York Giants. They got embarrassed last week by the Vikings. They looked to me worse than Carolina. They looked like the worst team in football. And as I've said during the past week, it's Daniel Jones, it's Bryce Young, it's Will Levis, it's Deshaun Watson competing to be the worst quarterback right now in football. Jaden Daniels' debut, a lot like every rookie in the NFL, did not go well. This is a division game, and the Giants in Brian Daboll's tenure, they've struggled against Philly, they've struggled against Dallas, they've done well against the Commanders, though we know the Commanders' new head coach is former Cowboy DC Dan Quinn, though Dan Quinn does not have the corners, he does not have the defense that he had in Dallas. I think the Giants will play better. I think they're hearing a lot of noise about Daniel Jones. I think Washington will play better. I think both of these two teams' defenses got lit up in week one. The spread of 1.5 is about right here for this game. I'll take the Commanders at home. I think Jaden Daniels outplays Daniel Jones. I think Dan Quinn, will be able to scheme some things up against Daniel Jones better than what the Giants will do against Washington. But is there a situation where the Giants win this game? Yes, there is. Saints at Cowboys. This is my other bet. I'm taking Dallas to win by at least a touchdown. The spread's 6.5, so if they win by 7, they cover. I think the Saints come back down to earth. Mike Zimmer and the Dallas Cowboys absolutely obliterated the Cleveland Browns last week, and we see this early in the year from Dallas, right? We saw how they took care of the Giants last year, week one, how they took care of the Jets week two. They did lose to Arizona week three. The Cowboys are front runners. And the Saints defense, like we talked about all offseason, yes, they have some talent. I don't trust Dennis Allen as the head coach. I think the biggest shock possibly in the entire NFL week one was how good Derek Carr looked. I think that was more about the Panthers' defense than it was about the Saints' offense. And I think the Saints' offensive line is not great. And I think Dallas's defensive line will overpower New Orleans' offensive line. I think the Dallas defense will create some turnovers, get some short fields for the newly highest paid quarterback in the NFL in Dak Prescott. And I think in Dallas, this is a rout for the Dallas Cowboys. And Niners at Vikings. I was highly considering taking Minnesota plus 6.5. I'm gonna like San Francisco to win this game, regardless if Christian McCaffrey plays or not. I don't think George Mason is gonna have the game he did against the New York Jets last week. But I also think the Niners very early in the season is tough. I think a lot like Kansas City, you want to play them sort of in the middle of the season where they might be able to board. There's some injuries. Everybody's not humming. But I think San Francisco wants to make a statement here. Sam Darnold played very well for Kevin O'Connell in week one. It was against the Giants. I think Kyle Shanahan and the Niners are going to know Sam Darnold's limitations. more than Kirk Cousins' limitations, who played out of this world last year in that Monday night game. And San Francisco did not have Ayuk, they did not have Trent Williams, and that was one of the biggest reasons why they lost that game. I think Minnesota will keep it close. Again, they got a lot of weapons: Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison got hurt last week. We don't know the status there. But I like San Francisco to win the game. Then this will certainly be on my NFL Sunday ticket in the 1 o'clock window on my other screen. The rematch of the divisional round, Tampa at Detroit. The Lions to me are favored by 7, which feels like, again, a lot of points for a divisional round matchup. The Lions are getting a full touchdown. We know how well Tampa played against Detroit in the divisional round. We saw Tampa light up the Commanders in week 1. We saw the Lions secondary get pushed around essentially by Cooper Kupp. But the one thing I'll say about this Detroit team, they are physical. They can run the football down your throat, and Jared Goff, with time, is a very accurate quarterback in a dome. I think Todd Bowles is a good defensive coordinator, but Tampa could not stop Detroit last year in that divisional round game outside of a couple mistakes by Goff. I think they're going to have to force some mistakes. I don't know if they're going to be able to. I think Tampa sort of feels good after they beat up on a bad Commanders defense. I think Aiden Hutchinson and crew will test Baker Mayfield a little bit. I think this will be a close game. I think points will be put up. I think Tampa Bay's offense will score on Detroit. I'm just not sure Tampa Bay can keep up with the Lions offense. You know, spread's about right. This feels like about a 34-27, 34-28 type game to me in favor of Detroit. Now, Arizona is favored by 1.5 against the Rams, which is a little bit shocking to me. But when you consider the fact the Rams have offensive line injuries, when you consider the Puka Nakua injury, it does make a little bit of sense. But I'm taking the Rams. I'm not going to bet it because, again, I think Arizona's frisky. I think they showed things at the end of the year. I think Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford is going to be a very entertaining quarterback duel. But I like the Rams to actually win this game. To cover the 1.5 then in that scenario. I just think what Sean McVay did Sunday night. Now they did play overtime, which always worries me about the next week. You play an extra quarter. But they did never touch the ball in overtime. So that could be extra motivation for the offense. Arizona played a very hard game against Buffalo where they blew that lead. And I think Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay are just going to put on a coaching clinic. Jonathan Gannon has always struggled against the Shanahan, O'Connell, McVay zone run scheme. Pittsburgh at Denver. I'll tell you right now, I'm shocked Denver is getting 3. I was thinking of taking Denver +3 because I don't like Mike Tomlin as a favorite. I like Mike Tomlin more as an underdog. I'm going to take Denver to win the game, but again, I don't feel confident in it. Justin Fields did not play great last week. Now, they kicked 6 field goals and they won the game because that defense was tremendous against Atlanta. And Bo Nix against a defensive coach and Mike Tomlin, I'm worried about here for Denver. I think Bo Nix can turn the ball over, and I can certainly see a scenario where the Steelers start 2-0. But I always think going to Mile High very early in the year is a hard ass, and Pittsburgh has historically struggled when going to Denver. I think history is more on the Broncos side. Then the big game. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, 425 CBS, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. Do I say anything else? Now, am I concerned about the video that went around social media of Joe Burrow barely being able to pick up a Gatorade bottle? A little bit. Am I concerned about Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the whole contract situation, the injury situation? A little bit. But again, you give me Patrick Mahomes, you give me Joe Burrow. History is on the side of Kansas City because Andy Reid always does well in September and Cincinnati always struggles in September. But I think that, this is our new Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. This is our new Patriots Colts or Patriots Broncos. We thought for a little bit it would be Buffalo, Kansas City. I really think it's Cincinnati, Kansas City. I think the Bengals will be up for the Chiefs. I think they will give the Chiefs everything they can handle. I'm going to pick Kansas City to win the game, but again, I think it will be close. Does Kansas City cover and win by 7? It's possible. Does Cincinnati cover and even win? It's possible. This is just a watch the game for me. Enjoy these two great quarterbacks play. Chicago at Houston. This is Sunday night. It could get ugly. Houston could put a lot of pressure up early if they score first and forcing Caleb Williams and the Bears out of their run game, forcing Caleb Williams to, drop back into Daniil Hunter, into Will Anderson. I think, the Bears, again, Roma Dunze is also earned a wide receiver that does hurt the receiving core a little bit. We saw Caleb Williams miss Keenan Allen, one wide open for a touchdown, one Keenan Allen dropped. That connection is going to have to get strengthened. Cole Kmet, to me, is going to have to get the ball more. He only caught one ball in week 1. And Houston's offense was a machine. I mean, Joe Mixon got 30 carries and ran right through that Indianapolis defense. I don't think he's going to get the same production because I actually think the Bears have a pretty good run defense. And I think Eberflus is going to do a good job containing Stephon Diggs. This is going to have to be a Nico Collins Tank Dell game, in my opinion, for the Houston Texans, who, again, I think the Bears are going to try to do and keep them around 20 to 23 points, be able to run the football with Caleb Williams, play action, get him settled. I think the most important thing for Chicago in this game is to stay close in the first half. If they do so, I think they have a shot to pull the upset. I could see a scenario where Houston blows out Chicago. I could see a scenario where the Bears keep this game close. This is another stay away game for me, but I'm very excited to watch the second overall pick in the 2023 draft, the first overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft go head to head. I'll take Houston with a victory. And then we get to Monday night. Atlanta, Philly, Kirk Cousins in prime time. Eagles coming off the Friday night game in Brazil, where they obviously had a lot to clean up, but there was a lot to like there with Philly. Jalen Hurts typically does play well in prime time. Eagles home opener, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio's debut. I think Atlanta is going to play well, actually. Kirk Cousins is going to have one of his rare good Monday night games, in my opinion. I think they really struggled against week 1 against Pittsburgh. I think they're going to struggle to block Philadelphia's pass rush that features the likes of Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Brandon Graham, Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat. But I think Atlanta's defense will play a little bit better than what it did against Pittsburgh. Again, they did not allow a touchdown. I think Philadelphia's offense, though, is a little bit more dynamic. In the end, I think it comes down to, a turnover or two by Philadelphia's defense. I think the Eagles win. I'm actually not sure they cover the 6.5 because the Eagles seem to want to play close games as of late. I think if they do, it will be relatively close. I don't think this is a blowout, but I've already said that, in my opinion, Atlanta will start the year 0-3. They will lose to Pittsburgh. They will lose to Philly. They will lose to Kansas City. They will still win the NFC South. If you remember, that was my initial prediction going into the year. So to recap, I got Miami over Buffalo Thursday night, Jacksonville over Cleveland, Jets on the road against Tennessee, Seattle on the road against New England, Indy on the road against Green Bay, Baltimore at home over Vegas, Chargers on the road against Carolina, Commanders at home against the Giants, Cowboys at home against the Saints, Niners on the road against Minnesota, Detroit at home against Tampa. I have the Rams on the road against Arizona, Denver at home against Pittsburgh, Kansas City at home against Cincinnati, Houston home against Chicago, and Philly at home against Atlanta. And now, my 5 best bets for week 2 of the 2024 NFL season are Jaguars -3.5. I have them covering against Cleveland. I have the Jets -4.5 covering on the road against Tennessee. I have Seattle -3.5. They cover on the road against New England. I have Indy on the road -3.5. They cover against Green Bay. And I have Dallas at home -6.5. They cover at home against New Orleans. Yes, All 5 of my best bets this week are in the 1 o'clock window, and all of them are favorites. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.